What would happen if the United States left NATO? A wild thought, isn't it? The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, also known as NATO, is a political and military alliance that was established in 1949. It's a collective of 29 countries from North America and Europe who've pledged to defend each other if any one of them is attacked. The United States, being one of the founding members, has always been a key player within NATO, often seen as the glue that holds the alliance together. Now let's imagine a world where the United States decides to leave NATO. Picture the political landscape shifting dramatically. The United States, a global titan that has led and influenced international decisions for decades, suddenly steps back. The immediate reaction would be shock and confusion. Allies would scramble to reassess their security, while adversaries might see it as an opportunity. The diplomatic fallout would be immense. Trust, which is the bedrock of any alliance, would be severely damaged. The United States' relationships with many of its closest allies would be strained as they grapple with the sudden vacuum in leadership. Other NATO members would be left wondering, who's next? This could potentially lead to a domino effect, causing other member countries to reconsider their position in the alliance. The absence of the United States could also embolden rogue states or non-state actors to test the waters. Without the deterrent of the United States military might, these entities might become more aggressive, leading to a potentially more unstable world. And then there's the economic impact. The US contributes a significant portion of NATO's budget. Without this funding, NATO would have to reassess its operations and capabilities, perhaps leading to a weaker defense structure. The immediate effects would be just the beginning. Let's delve into the ripple effect. As the diplomatic dust settles, the real impact starts to show. Picture the world's economic stage. The United States leaving NATO doesn't just shake up the military paradigm, it creates a ripple effect that could potentially engulf the global economy. Not merely because the US is a significant contributor to NATO's budget, but because such a move would likely hamper the transatlantic trade. It would create uncertainty, and as we all know, markets hate uncertainty. Now let's shift our gaze to the military implications. Without the United States, NATO loses not just its highest contributing member, but also a significant part of its military prowess. Remember, America's military expenditure is more than double the combined spending of all other NATO countries. This could encourage other member nations to bolster their own defenses, leading to an unexpected surge in global military spending. And what about the balance of power? Well, it could shift dramatically, both globally and within NATO. The United States has long been seen as a global power, and its departure from NATO could lead to a geopolitical power vacuum. Countries like Russia and China might seize the opportunity to assert their dominance, while within NATO, nations like Germany and France might have to step up to take the reins. This shift could also stoke the flames of tension between NATO members and non-members. Without the US as a unifying force, NATO might become more susceptible to external pressures and internal strife. This could lead to a more fragmented and less effective alliance. And yet, these are just the immediate repercussions of such a monumental decision. But what about the long-term consequences? They could be even more profound. The ripple effect caused by the United States leaving NATO might continue to be felt for decades, altering the course of global politics and international relations in ways we can only begin to imagine. In the long run, the departure of the US from NATO could reshape the world as we know it. Imagine a large-scale game of chess, where nations are the players and alliances are the strategies. Now visualize one of the main players, the United States, exiting the game. This would create a power vacuum, causing the remaining players to rethink their strategies, possibly leading to a reshuffling of alliances and partnerships. The US leaving NATO could prompt other nations to form new alliances or strengthen existing ones, such as the European Union. These alliances might become more militarized, as countries seek to fill the security void left by the US withdrawal. Imagine the EU developing a unified military force to counter potential threats. This could be a game-changer, altering the balance of power. Increased militarization could also escalate the risk of conflicts. Without the US and NATO, there could be less deterrent for aggressive actions by nations with expansionist tendencies. Think about it. If there's no one to check the king, the game becomes more unpredictable and potentially more dangerous. Moreover, the departure of the US might embolden non-state actors such as terrorist groups or cybercriminals, who could exploit the perceived weakening of collective security. This could result in an increase in cyber attacks, terrorism, and other forms of violence, making the world a more volatile place. The US leaving NATO could also affect the global economy. The uncertainty surrounding security could deter investment and trade, slowing down economic growth. Countries might focus more on military spending at the expense of social and economic development, which could lead to increased poverty and inequality. In essence, the US exiting NATO could set off a chain of events, leading to a world that is more militarized, unstable, and economically uncertain. It's a dramatic shift that could change the dynamics of international relations, security, and economics. It's clear the potential impacts are far-reaching, but let's bring it back home. How would this decision impact the United States directly? This is a question of paramount importance when considering the potential departure of the US from NATO. The first area to consider is US foreign policy. For over 7 decades, the United States has been a cornerstone of NATO, shaping its strategies and decisions. With its exit, the US would potentially lose its ability to influence the collective policies and actions of its European allies. This could lead to a shift in global power dynamics, with the US losing some of its clout on the international stage. Next, let's talk about national security. A departure from NATO could expose the US to increased security threats. The Collective Defense Clause of NATO, Article 5, stipulates an attack on one is an attack on all. Without this assurance, the US may find itself more vulnerable to potential aggressors. Now let's turn our attention to the economic sphere. The US economy is intertwined with those of its NATO allies in many ways. A departure from NATO could disrupt these ties, leading to economic instability. It could also impact the US's bargaining power in trade negotiations and economic agreements with other NATO member countries. Furthermore, the departure could significantly alter the US's relationships with both allies and adversaries. It could strain ties with long-standing allies, who may feel abandoned or betrayed. On the other hand, it might embolden adversaries, who could perceive the US's departure as a sign of weakening resolve. To sum up, the impacts of the US leaving NATO would extend far beyond the realm of defense. They would touch upon every facet of the US's engagements with the world, from foreign policy and national security to economics and international relations. The US leaving NATO would undoubtedly have significant implications both at home and abroad. The full extent and nature of these implications, however, would only unfold with time and perhaps at a greater cost than one might anticipate. What we've explored today is a hypothetical scenario, but it's one that helps us understand the importance of alliances. We've taken a deep dive into the potential consequences of the United States leaving NATO. We've seen how such a move could send ripples across the globe, altering the balance of power and potentially destabilizing international relations. The immediate aftermath could be marked by uncertainty and tension as nations scramble to adjust to a new world order. As we discussed, the long-term consequences could be even more far-reaching. We could witness a shift in power dynamics, with countries like Russia and China potentially seizing the opportunity to expand their spheres of influence. This could lead to a new era of global politics, marked by heightened geopolitical tension and increased risk of conflicts. We also took a close look at how such a move would impact the US itself. The country could lose its strategic advantage in Europe and face challenges in maintaining its global influence. It could also mean a significant alteration in its military strategy and foreign policy. But beyond all these potential consequences, what this hypothetical scenario truly highlights is the importance of international cooperation and alliances. In an increasingly interconnected world, it is through unity and mutual support that we can maintain global peace and stability. Alliances like NATO not just serve as a deterrent to conflict, but also foster a sense of shared security and mutual trust among member nations. They help to create a world where nations work together to address common threats and challenges, rather than resorting to unilateral actions that can lead to instability and conflict. They remind us that in a world that's more connected than ever, our actions have global repercussions, and thus, it's crucial to consider the broader implications of our decisions. The departure of the US from NATO could have profound implications, but it's important to remember the value of unity in a world that's more interconnected than ever before.